Hello, I'm Tom Equals, the CEO and President of ImmunoTech. Thank you for your interest in our company. Today's presentation is principally about our experimental drug Ampligen. You'll see here on this title page slide our motto, Immunology for a Better Future. I'm a believer that Ampligen is the shape of things to come in immunology, and I'm going to do my best to show you why. First, I'd like you to address the forward-looking statement. We're a public company. We file Qs and Ks that articulate our risks and disclosures that are a part of explaining what the risks are in an industry such as ours. So if you would take the time to read this and also look at those sections of our public disclosures, I would appreciate it. Now, we have two platform products, Ampligen and Alferon. As I said, we're going to focus on Ampligen because that's where most of our activity is right now, and it's important activity. Ampligen is a double-stranded RNA toll-like receptor 3 agonist, which, as a mechanism of action, its bioactivity is related to its stimulation of an innate immune response. We see things like genes associated with immune response being activated, but more importantly, cascades of type 1 interferon, and generally a heightened immune response. And also in the various experimental activity that's been undertaken, we see how Ampligen modulates the immune system in ways that affect tumors and viruses in a very positive with very positive therapeutic potential. Now, Ampligen is being evaluated for ME/CFS, COVID-19, long COVID, and in multiple types of solid tumor cancers. A brief note about Alferon. Alferon is FDA approved, and it's the only natural alpha interferon approved by the FDA. It's also approved by Argentina. Its approval in the United States is limited to recurrent external genital warts. Argentina has approved it for all refractory recurrent conditions where recombinant alpha interferon is ineffective due to neutralizing antibodies. Ampligen as well has been recently approved for ME/CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, in Argentina. And we're in the United States, we have a new drug application pending. We're addressing complete response letter issues, and we've completed phase 3 trials in the United States. Here's our pipeline for Ampligen. This is a pipeline of clinical trials. You'll see it's extremely robust. You know, the typical small research and development type company is often boasting about its various in vitro or animal experiments. And we certainly have done many of those. But these are clinical trials in humans at respected research centers. Some of the top cancer research centers in the country are participating utilizing Ampligen as an experimental therapeutic in very difficult to treat lethal malignancies. For example, you'll see this first section here. We're talking about ovarian cancer. We have 2 ovarian cancer studies, one that's complete and the other one that's underway at the University of Pittsburgh. The phase 2 is a large study, 45 subjects, combining Ampligen with pembrolizumab, otherwise known as Keytruda. But we're in humans, in the clinic, trying to make a difference in a disease which, for many women, is simply a death sentence, advanced recurrent ovarian cancer. So these are important public health issues. They're severe unmet medical needs, and we're addressing them in humans at top institutions in this country. With regard to COVID-19, Our work there is based upon a foundation of in vitro and animal model results. But we are now in the clinic in humans with Ampligen as an infusion therapy for early onset COVID-19 with mild to moderate symptoms, with Ampligen as a therapy for COVID-induced chronic fatigue or long COVID or PSC. Everybody has yet to decide on a name for that, but we're talking about the same thing, we believe. And we are in the clinic with our intranasal Ampligen prophylaxis program, and that's a safety study because we're administering Ampligen intranasally every other day so we can establish the safety parameters, which will allow us to move into a phase 2 once we understand what the safety parameters are for intranasal administration. And that's to create a prophylaxis, not just for COVID-19, but potentially for all forms of RNA respiratory viruses. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about our current COVID-19 efforts. And again, we moved past the in vitro work. We're not doing this in animals. We're doing this in humans. And as we move forward and the number of treated subjects grows, we believe we have an opportunity to create a breakthrough type situation in these niche areas of the COVID-19 problem. And it's not like a vaccine that solves all the problems, but for people who are exposed or people who are in areas where they could be exposed, having an intranasal prophylaxis could be extremely meaningful. And for people who have become infected but are in the early stages of the disease, having a non-hospitalization alternative involving infusion therapy for a relatively short period of time could be an extremely meaningful therapeutic alternative. So we're putting a lot of effort into this, and we're doing it because there's a need. With regard to the long COVID and the COVID infusion therapy, subjects are being treated as we speak. And with regard to the intranasal Ampligen prophylaxis therapy, healthy subjects are being treated because we're still in the safety phase of that study. Now, this prophylaxis safety study is an AIM-sponsored trial, which means we have a lot more control over the timing and everything, and we're funding that so that we can move very quickly to get results. It is anticipated that by mid-June of 2021, all of the subjects participating in the study will have been treated. Now, it may take 2, 3, 4 months after that for the various issues to analyze and be able to articulate the data. The safety data have been finished, but it's a clear timeline. We like the concept of utilizing our resources to have AIM-sponsored trials whenever possible, because if we're the sponsor of the trial, it also gives us an opportunity to develop clear timelines that we will apply to that trial. This allows us to see where the inflection points are and work towards achieving the progress that was originally contemplated in the timeline. I do have to say, though, clinical trials in the time of a pandemic can be fraught with certain problems that are outside of our control. So, for example, if you have an area where you're conducting a clinical trial that goes into a shutdown mode, that's going to have an effect on the timing of the trial. So these are things that we can't control, but everything that we can control, we've got full speed ahead, and we're moving on an accelerated basis as possible. Now, many of you have heard about the government funding for long COVID. There's a huge amount of money that's coming to fund, basic research as well as research into therapies in this space. And we've hired top consultants to assist us in acquiring some of those funds to supplement and enhance the depth of our research in this space. However, we have already started our COVID initiative as far as long haulers are concerned. We have a program that is already in existence. It's an FDA authorized compassionate care program for chronic fatigue syndrome. And we obtained an amendment of that program called AMP 511, which allows us to treat COVID-induced chronic fatigue and also shortens the time period that the subjects have to demonstrate the symptoms of COVID-induced chronic fatigue to 3 months. So we have already enrolled and begun treating, and we're going to move forward with this program as rapidly as possible. We're allowed under this program to treat up to 20 subjects at any one time. This will be, we believe, a precursor to placebo-controlled studies that we hope to conduct both in Europe and the United States in long COVID. Now, we coined, there are many different names for long haulers, long COVID, PASC. We call it COVID survivor syndrome. But it's important to note that the chronic fatigue epidemic that is expected here as a result of COVID-19 is not just mere conjecture. Top experts will tell you that chronic fatigue syndrome, and certainly the chronic fatigue syndrome that Ampligen responders in the clinic have reported, often starts with a flu-like illness. Now, that being the case, we look back, and when we looked at the SARS epidemic about 10 years ago, of survivors at one Hong Kong hospital, 27%, 2 years after their acute infection had resolved, 27% of those survivors of SARS met the United States CDC guidelines for chronic fatigue syndrome, the diagnostic guidelines. We are seeing exactly the same thing play out post-COVID-19. COVID-19 is caused by almost like a brother genetically to the virus that caused SARS. SARS is caused by SARS-CoV-1, COVID-19 by SARS-CoV-2. They have a very high level of identity genetically, and we expected, and we are seeing now similar results in terms of post-acute infection subjects demonstrating chronic fatigue syndrome symptoms. Now, that having been said, we are going to move forward in this space because we can see with the level of infection that's taken place in the United States with COVID-19, there's a possibility, that there may be hundreds and hundreds of thousands with a serious post-acute infection problem that, like I said, we like to call COVID survivor syndrome. And we believe that we have an opportunity to make a difference with Ampligen as a therapy in that space. Now, I'd like to turn to Ampligen and cancer. Many of you who have followed us will know that 4 years ago, one of the things, and it was one of the first things that I did, was to make a clear effort to repurpose Ampligen as a broad spectrum anti-tumor agent in unmet needs with lethal malignancies. We started off in our process based upon information that was derived from animal experiments showing Ampligen having a synergistic effect with checkpoint blockade therapies. But we also had data showing that Ampligen on a standalone basis might have potential as well. The reason being is that Ampligen modifies, we believe, the microenvironment of tumors in a way so as to drop the camouflage that keeps the immune system from attacking tumors in certain types of cancers. Now, many of the ongoing clinical trials that you saw on that flow chart, are trials that are designed with the objective of showing that Ampligen converts cold tumors into hot tumors that will be responsive to checkpoint inhibitors, and also, we believe, responsive to Ampligen on a standalone basis. The concept is based upon a shift in the T cell environment inside the tumor, in the microenvironment of the tumor. In effect, we increase the intratumoral effector T cells. Sometimes people call those killer T cells. And we decrease the levels of intratumoral regulatory T cells, sometimes called suppressor T cells. The goal is to create a ratio of these T cells in the microenvironment that causes the immune system to be able to identify the tumor as something that requires an immune response. Now, Ampligen, in addition to the efficacy work that we've done, as I mentioned when we were talking about chronic fatigue syndrome, we've administered in humans close to 100,000 doses intravenously. So we know that it has a generally well-tolerated safety profile, especially in lethal malignancies. It shouldn't be an issue. Now, I've talked a bit about our role in oncology, but on this slide, some of the top researchers, top cancer researchers in the country, for that matter, expressed their views about the potential for Ampligen. When you get a chance, look this over, because what they're saying is what we're saying. If we do these clinical trials and we're able to show what we think Ampligen's potential is, it will change the way oncology is practiced by introducing a new and important immunological tool into the toolbox of oncologists all over the world. Now, here we have a discussion of the various trials. And we have some time constraints, so I'm not going to go through these in detail, but you can go to clinicaltrial.gov and this is the government site, and see what's going on, see what the protocols are generally, and satisfy yourself that this is the clinical work that we're doing is the real deal. And it's not just the real deal in that it's going on, that it's being done with humans. It's also being done by top researchers at top cancer research institutions. Very importantly, we started 4 years ago with the cooperation of Erasmus University's Medical Center, Professor Van Eyck being the lead investigator, and the government of the Netherlands, an aggressive but really a program that in its innovation has reaped more rewards than we ever imagined possible. We began treating extremely advanced pancreatic cancer patients, locally advanced or where they had metastasized, and the results were not just giving us an immunological profile for the future, but rather significant survival results. Median survival was 7 months longer in the Ampligen arm as compared to historical controls. And additionally, it has allowed us to, as next steps, move forward. But first, we move forward with the FDA and the EMA granting us orphan drug designation after their evaluation of the initial safety and efficacy scenario, we were given orphan drug designation, and there are many, many benefits, including market exclusivity from the date of drug approval that flow with that orphan drug designation. Now, we are in the process of working on a protocol, design, and schema. It is our hope that this next phase 2-3 study will be a pivotal study, and it'll be conducted in consultation with the Buffett Cancer Center at Omaha, Nebraska, and the Erasmus Medical Center at Rotterdam, Netherlands. And we are also seeking to obtain, once we put our clinical research papers together, FDA fast track or possibly even breakthrough designations. So that's our plan. I can't promise you that we're going to be able to achieve all of those things, but that's what we're going to initiate. And I can promise you that we're going to be working very hard to get this pancreatic cancer study up and running as quickly as possible, because we are adding significant survival benefit based upon a study that was done with a relatively large number of subjects and a statistically significant result. Now, our final several slides discuss Alferon and the Alferon pipeline, our IP estate, our investment highlights, and our financial state. And it's followed by 3 slides that have peer-reviewed medical articles in major publications supporting much of what we've discussed today. So please, at your leisure, review those materials. But know this, financially, we've strived to create a situation where we're not only able to fund and accelerate our progress in important clinical trials, but also have the staying power to see the results of those trials. So look over those last several slides, and I thank you all very much for your interest in Ampligen and AIM ImmunoTech. And again, we're trying to create immunological agents for a better future. Thank you. Slides here.